Hey everyone, welcome to the Where Are My Leads webcast. I'm Paul Slack with Vindy Digital, and I'm super excited that you're here because over the next hour or so, I'm going to walk you through 3 practical steps that are going to help you generate more leads for your business with digital marketing right now. And I know this is important because in talking with B2B companies, I know that there's a lot of B2B marketers that are out there that are really worried. They're worried about engaging in digital marketing tactics that really aren't moving their companies forward. They're also worried about investing time, energy, and most importantly, money on activities that really aren't producing good results for them. And then finally, and probably most importantly, they're worried about growing their leads and generating enough pipelines so that their businesses can produce the revenue goals that they are trying to achieve this year. And I know this because we actually did a poll at the beginning of the year where we polled over 300 B2B marketing leaders and we asked them a simple question. We just said, what is your number one marketing challenge this year? What is that one thing that's keeping you awake at night? And you can see in this chart right here that nearly half of them, 150 or more basically said their number one challenge was generating enough leads for their business. And so what I really want to do today is walk you through some things that are going to help you, use digital marketing in such a way to generate more leads for your business. Because at Vindy Digital, we really do believe that you deserve digital marketing that's actually going to produce revenue, right? It's not about throwing a lot of spaghetti against the wall and hoping that something is going to stick. But if we're going to engage time, energy, and effort on digital marketing, that it actually should produce pipeline growth that ultimately turns into revenue for your business. But we believe at Vindy Digital, to be successful, you really need to be consistent. And in order to be consistent, you really need a framework. And so what I want to do real quick, and ultimately we're going to talk about these 3 steps that are going to help you predictably grow leads and grow your pipeline for your business. But I wanted to introduce you to our B2B lead funnel framework because this is really the lens, if you will, or our point of view on how to do digital marketing the right way. So while we dig into 3 specific steps here in a minute, they're all going to kind of go through the lens of this framework. And so the first part of our framework is really all about planning. Right? If we're going to be successful in digital marketing, we've really got to have a good plan. We've got to have good guardrails on what does winning look like? Where are we trying to grow as a business? Who is our target customer? What are the words we need to be saying to that target customer to get them excited about our business? And then ultimately, what are the topics that we need to be writing about that they're going to want to read to help them make informed purchase decisions? So we need a good plan. And then from there, we need to move into activating our audience. Now that we know who our customer is, it's really important that we understand what are those watering holes? What are those areas online where they're spending time? Especially what are those areas where they're spending time to learn about ways to solve problems for their business? And so we need to have a plan around activating our audience. And then from there, we need to go into establishing authority. And at Vindy, we really do believe the best place for you to establish authority is on your website and your blog. And what I mean by establishing authority simply means communicating to your prospect that you are qualified to solve the problem that they have, but not only that you have that you can establish authority, but you also have empathy, right? That you care about solving their problem. Truly, the best place to do that is on your website and your blog. And then ultimately, the last phase of our B2B lead funnel framework is this nurture relationship phase. This is a really important phase because we're all B2Bs on this webinar today, and we know that we have long sales cycles. And so we can't really control when our buyers are going to be ready to say yes. But what we can control is that when they are ready to say yes, they think of you first and not your competition. And the best way to do that is by nurturing relationships and staying top of mind. And so as we go through this presentation today, this webinar today, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions and really I want this to be really practical for you. So, you'll see me ask you a lot of questions. I'm even going to give you some homework here in a little bit. And so here's kind of my first question that I want you to consider. As you look at this framework, are you making any mistakes in these areas? Or maybe better yet, kind of look at this framework and go, am I missing something here, right? Maybe I don't have a good plan, or maybe I don't really understand the watering holes where my customers are hanging out. Or maybe when you look at your website, you don't feel like you're doing a good job of establishing authority, or maybe you don't have a blog, right? And then ultimately, what are you doing to stay top of mind and nurture relationships? So, just think about that as we go through the presentation today, because that might create some gaps or opportunities that you can use to really start generating more leads for your business. And that's ultimately what this webinar is all about. So that's our framework. But like I said at the very beginning of the webcast today, we're going to focus on 3 practical steps that you can take that are going to really help you generate more leads. And the first step is this, and these are all tied to problems that I see B2B companies struggle with all the time. The first one is traffic. A lot of B2Bs are not generating enough leads for their business because they're not generating enough traffic for their business. Or sometimes they're getting traffic, but it's the wrong traffic. And so I'm going to walk you through some things that you can do right away to generate more traffic for your website. Number 2 is messaging. So maybe you've got great traffic, you're getting people coming to your website, but when they come to your website, they really don't understand the problems that you can solve for them. So maybe they're just confused about your message and your offer. And that gets me to number 3, which is your offer. So maybe you've got great traffic coming to your website. Maybe you have good messaging even, but you really don't have a good offer. And here's what I mean by that. Your customers or prospects, when they come to your website and they see your call to action, whatever that may be, they just don't believe that that call to action is going to help them solve whatever problem that they're trying to solve. And so what we're going to spend our time on today is really digging into these 3 areas and giving you some things you can do to fix these problems. Now, it really is a 2-part process. So today, I hate to admit it to you, but I'm just going to have to fire hose you with a lot of information. And if you've ever been to one of my webcasts before, you kind of know that's how I roll. I don't know how to do it any other way. But today you're going to get a fire hose. We're going to overview these concepts with you. But then I would encourage you to schedule a 45-minute one-on-one planning session with me. Now, this is 100% complimentary. I'm not going to charge you for this 45-minute planning session. I'm not even going to try to sell you anything. All I'm really wanting to do is help you apply these concepts that I'm going to share in a macro way specifically to your business, because I know a lot of B2B marketers really struggle with how to implement some of the things we're going to be talking about today. So the way I like to do it is kind of fire hose you, give you a couple of days to consider some of the things that we're talking about, and then let's get together for that one-on-one and really talk about your specific situation and how we can apply these things to your situation. Now, to schedule your one-on-one with me, there's a few ways you can do that. Number 1, you can go to vendidigital.com/go, right there, vendidigital.com/go, or you can actually scroll down on the page that you're watching this live webcast right now, and you'll see I've got 2 links there. The link on the left is actually going to take you to the same page. It's also going to give you access to some resources I'll talk about in a second. The button on the right, though, will take you right to my calendar. And whenever I do these webinars, I always block off a couple of weeks. I'm just giving you a warning right now. They fill up really fast. So even during the webinar today, you might want to open up another tab or click on that button and go ahead and get your 45-minute planning session scheduled, because they do, like I said, fill up fast. Now, I am going to provide access to my slides. When you click on that resource button or go to this URL here, you'll be able to download my slides and follow along with me today. Now, I did mention to you a resource that I wanted to make available to you, and it's a great little resource. It's our B2B Lead Funnel Framework Workbook. So I just walked you through our framework a couple of minutes ago. This is a 68-page companion document that walks you through each of the phases. And because I don't have a lot of time today, I'm going to actually reference certain pages of the workbook as I go through the material. Now, you don't need to download it during this webinar, but when you go back and either rewatch this or look at the slides, you'll see them referenced there as well. That's going to give you additional information that will help you accomplish these steps that I'm going to be walking you through today. So that's how you get that. You just go to that resource page I just talked about. Now, we believe your marketing is going to have to change because our B2B buyers have changed. And man, after the last year, things have really changed a lot. But I wanted to share with you some statistics. Did you know that 60% of the B2B buyers out there today are actually millennials? We call those folks digital natives. I mean, these are folks that grew up early on with access to the internet. They had smartphones or certainly cell phones early on in their lives, and they're just really comfortable with going to the internet to get information. And that's why digital marketing is so important. Also, did you know that 90% of research online today is done anonymously. So when a buyer is out there looking for information on how to solve a problem, that 90% of them are actually doing that anonymously. You don't even know that they're in market. And as a result of that, according to Gartner, buyers are 80% through the buying process before they ever pick up the phone and talk to your sales reps. I mean, think about that. They're 80% through the buying process. If we were to look at that and think of it like a football field, they're on the 20-yard line. They've gone 80 yards and they're about ready to score a touchdown before they ever talk to a sales rep. And so it's really critical from a digital marketing perspective that we are engaging with those buyers early cycle, giving them the information that they need when they're searching and researching anonymously, so that when they are ready to talk to a sales rep, they're thinking about your brand first. Okay, so I mentioned we've got 3 steps I'm going to walk you through today. The very first step is fixing your traffic. And traffic is really all about helping you attract the right buyers that really need your help right now. And so the big issue that I see that companies that are struggling with traffic have is, quite frankly, they're just not producing enough content. You've got to create content if you want traffic. So let me say that again. If you are not generating traffic to your website today, it's because you're not generating enough content. So we absolutely need to create content, but there's 2 parts to this. We need to create content, but we also need to promote the content that we create. I'm going to say that again because I really want to make sure everybody understands that. It's not just about creating content. It's about distributing that content. It's about promoting that content, as we activate our audience so that our customers really can consume that content. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And that really ties right into these 2 phases of our lead funnel framework, right? Activating our audience. If we're going to go hang out in those watering holes where our customers are hanging out, what are we going to do while we're there, right? We've got to give them something useful, and that's what our content will do. And then we also want to establish authority, and our content's going to give us the ability to do that as well. So content will build that trust, establish that authority. Another great thing that content does is it creates a gateway to your website. So this is why content creates traffic. So think about it. If you write a blog, and that blog, you then create a LinkedIn post about that blog that says, hey, check out this blog we just wrote, and somebody sees that in their newsfeed and they actually click on the link, that's going to take them out of LinkedIn onto your website. And so your content becomes a gateway to your website to create traffic. Also, if you write a blog, you're going to optimize that blog or it'll show up in Google, and that becomes a gateway of traffic into your website. So content is really the first and most important thing you need to think about in terms of getting more traffic to your website. So good content is critical though, right? We can't just create content for content's sake. You can't go around and go, okay, I hear that content is king, I need to create a lot of content, and you just start creating content for the content's sake. That's just not going to work. If you want to create content, what I call remarkable content, content that's really going to be useful for your target audience, it needs to do these 3 things. Number 1, it has to demonstrate your expertise, right? You've got to communicate in your content that you're an expert in something. Number 2, beyond your expertise, you really need to share your point of view, okay? Because it's not just, hey, I'm an expert here, but it's also, I see the world differently than maybe my competition. And why that's important is not everybody's going to agree with your point of view, but those that really do are going to become very attracted to what you have to say. But the 3rd point here is probably the most important point. Your content has got to create momentum. If your content doesn't create momentum, it's not really remarkable. And here's what I mean by creating momentum. Your content is actually for your buyer, not for you. And so as your buyer is consuming your content, you need to be thinking about what is the next logical step in their journey to help them make an informed purchase decision. And really, you're creating this content to help them accomplish that. And that's what I call creating momentum. So when you're wanting to create good content, make sure that you're hitting these 3 points. Did you know, this stat always blows my mind, that 5% of your buyers are actually in market right now? That means that 95% of your targeted accounts, and I'm a big fan of account-based marketing and target account selling, and so maybe you've got 500 accounts you're trying to crack or that are on your target account list. What this stat is telling us is that only 5% of those are actually in market right now. 95% are not. And so it's really important that we connect with those, not just with those that are in market, but also with those that are targeted prospects. They'd be great clients of ours. They just don't happen to be in market right now. But here's the other key point. 91% of B2B companies, according to TechTarget, actually purchase from the first vendor that provided value to them. And so if only 5% of our customers are in market at a given time, but 90% of customers are going to do business with that first vendor that provided value, content marketing is a critical key to accomplishing that goal. Now, we don't only want to sell to now buyers, and I think I've explained that to you, but that's one of the challenges why a lot of companies don't generate enough leads for their business, because they're focusing on what I call bottom of the funnel. And yes, absolutely, we all want bottom of the funnel now buyers, right? That's what I call them, the now buyers, right? But if we spend all of our time, energy, and effort on those, we're actually not going to be successful. It's much better for us to take a full funnel approach, and I'll get more into that here in a little bit. But right now, what I want to do is kind of give you a checklist, if you will, of the content that you need to be creating. So, you've heard me say content is really critical to generate traffic to your website. There's 6 things you need to be creating on a regular basis. The first one is you need to be creating blogs. So if you're not blogging today, you really need to be blogging. Now, we recommend to our B2B clients that they blog at least once a week or 4 times a month. If you're not blogging today, a good starting point might be every other week or twice a month. So you need to be blogging. Another thing you need to do is create a gated mid-funnel lead magnet once a quarter or 4 times a year. Now, when I get into the offer step a little bit later on in my presentation today, I'll talk more about that. But we need to have 4 things that we create each year that are going to allow our potential customer to opt in, basically give us their information in exchange for this lead magnet. And it's really critical that we do that. Again, I'll talk more about that here in a little bit. We need to be creating monthly videos. People would rather watch the internet today than read the internet today, and it's really important that you add video to your content mix. Now, you may be thinking, oh my gosh, video, that sounds expensive, that sounds hard. The reality is there's a lot of good ways to create video today, to repurpose content in a video modality, and I can certainly talk to you about options when we get together for a one-on-one, but be thinking about creating at least one video a month that you can share with your target audience. Next is infographics. Infographics are really awesome because what you do with an infograph is you take a really complicated concept and you consume the calories and really coming up with a way to make that super easy to explain to your customer and visually for your customers so it's easy for them to understand. And so infographics are a really important type of content to produce. Next are drip and nurture emails. And so remember in our lead funnel framework, that last phase is nurturing relationships. One of the best ways to nurture relationships is with email marketing. And so if you don't have a plan or you're not creating content to nurture your customers post-visit with emails, you're really missing out. And then finally, the last one is case studies and success stories. And so this is really important for that establish authority phase of our lead funnel framework because we want to communicate that we can help them solve their problem. And one of the best ways to accomplish that is show how you've solved that problem for other customers. So, here's a checklist. And again, I'm going to challenge you several times today during this webcast. Just take a minute and ask yourself, are you generating content in each of these 6 areas? Maybe you're not writing blogs. Maybe you're not doing videos. Maybe your case studies or success stories are 5 years old. And so be thinking about that. Maybe even write down one of these 6 areas that you need to work on. And during the one-on-one session, we can talk about that. Here's some good news, though. It's never been easier to target B2B buyers than right now. And so, I'm an old sales guy. I got started back in the 90s, and it was really hard to get in front of B2B buyers back then. But today, there are so many avenues and ways that we can get in front of our buyers, and we need to take advantage of those. And what I'm going to talk about today, because again, we're talking about driving traffic to your website, 2 key areas that you can use to get in front of your ideal prospect. The first one is earning your way in, and the second one is buying your way in. So let's take a look at earning your way in. So earning your way in is basically what are things where you can spend effort, if you will, without spending dollars to really get in front of your buyer. And so one of the first things a B2B company can do is search engine optimization. And you may be thinking to yourself, Paul, that's been around a long time. That's not anything new. I totally get it. In fact, we got our start 20 years ago doing SEO just for B2Bs because really that was the only thing that was around back then. But SEO is still absolutely critical today for several reasons. One of them is right here, that 71% of B2B buyers actually start their research. Remember, they're anonymous most of the time. They start their research actually on Google looking for information on how to solve this problem. But by the time that sales process is over, nearly 90% of the buyers are actually going to use Google at some point to help them in that decision-making process. Now, again, I don't have a ton of time to go through all of this today, and this is why I'm going to point you to that resource, that B2B Lead Funnel Framework Guide that you can actually get by going to that page, vendidigital.com/go. I don't think you should download it right now. Wait until we're done, but on page 29, we actually have a 13-step checklist that you can go through to help optimize your website. So, we've been doing search engine optimization for a long time. I just mentioned that. And Google has been, the 800-pound gorilla almost since the very beginning. And, the one thing I can tell you about Google is they have done major algorithmic changes throughout the last 20 years. And 100% of the time until just now, those algorithmic changes, we might have heard rumors about them. Those algorithmic changes absolutely impact their rankings and how your website ranks and how much traffic that you'll get. But they've never made an announcement about, hey, we've got this algorithmic change and it's happening at this point in the future. It's just something that you would hear speculation about until last year. Did you know last year they actually made an announcement and they said, hey, we've got a major change to the way that we're ranking websites that's going to happen in May of 2021, and it's called the Google Core Web Vitals Update. And so not only did they make a public announcement about it, but they also provided some tools so that you could see how well your website is stacking up to this algorithmic change. And so I'm telling you, if you haven't gone and done research on Google Core Web Vitals, it's something that you need to be paying attention to because it's going to happen real soon. Here we are in May of 2021. We haven't seen it really roll out just yet, but we know it's coming. And the good news is there's a lot of tools out there, as I mentioned, that you can plug your website in and kind of see how you're stacking up against this algorithmic change. In fact, during the one-on-one session, we have access to those tools. I'll be happy to plug your website into the tool and give you a report like this one that you're seeing here. It'll give you an overall score, but more importantly than that, it'll also give you specific things that you can do to your website to make it in compliance with this big algorithmic change. So maybe you think your website is optimized. If it's not optimized for Google Core Web Vitals, this is something that you need to be looking into. Okay, so we've talked about search engine optimization as a way to earn your way in. Another huge, but man, big time overlooked opportunity is what we call employee amplification. And employee amplification is just simply this: getting your employees, especially your sales reps, your C-levels, and your subject matter experts, sharing your content and engaging in social media. Because when you do, you're going to get more reach. Okay, because just think about exponentially, you've got one point of presence on LinkedIn, let's say, or Twitter, let's say, but if you can get multiple people within your organization sharing your content, you're going to get more reach. You're also going to get more trust because, believe it or not, when one of your employees shares a piece of content on their social platforms, the person that consumes that content or sees that post is actually going to trust it a lot more than when you post it yourself. And then number three, studies have shown that you'll actually generate more leads and more conversions by traffic that actually comes through your employees than traffic that comes through your brand. This stat blows my mind. That, the last time I saw, I think there's like 600 million users on LinkedIn today. At least that's the last stat that I've seen. It's probably a lot more than that now. But did you know that of the 600 million people that are on LinkedIn right now, that only 1% of those folks are actually sharing any content on LinkedIn? This is a huge opportunity for all of us. If we can get our employees sharing our content, they're going to be one of the 1%ers, right? Think about how much reach and impact that can have for your business. So here's just a quick example. So this is a post that we recently did at Vendi Digital that I also shared on my LinkedIn profile. And I got 4 times the reach and views than we did on our company profile for the very reasons that I'm talking about. And so it's really important to think about, how can I get my sales reps, how can I get my subject matter experts and my C-suite actually sharing our content online. So here's some quick stats for you. According to IBM, companies that have employee amplification going on get 5 times more reach with their content. According to Hootsuite, they get 24 times more engagement. And then finally, according to LinkedIn, this is mind-boggling, 7 times higher conversion rates. So if that visitor comes to your website and opts into something on your website and they came through one of your employees, your conversion rate is 7 times higher than if they came through another source. So employee amplification, if you're looking for ways to generate more leads and more traffic to your website, man, you need to be thinking about how can you get employee amplification started in your organization. I'm going to give you 3 quick things to think about to get that going. Number 1, take a look at your employees' profiles and make sure that they're optimized. A couple of things there. Just one, the way that they talk about their job with you and the way that they talk about your company is really important. Their profile, if you will, is their point of presence online, and it needs to be not about them. It needs to be about how your company and they specifically can help your customers. About your customer and how they can help your customer accomplish the goals that they're trying to accomplish. Another thing that you can do is give them a banner like you see right here. So this is Bailey. She's one of our team members, and she's got a Vindy Digital banner on her LinkedIn profile. Super easy to do, costs you hardly anything, but it gets that brand message across, and that's really, really important. Number 2, you want to make sure, especially that your sales reps are building connections with their potential customers. And we tell our clients that you want 5 deep within every targeted account. So if you've got 100 targeted accounts or a sales rep has 100 targeted accounts, they need to try to get at least 5 connections in each one of those accounts. And then finally, sharing your content. I've already talked about that. But man, if you want to kind of take baby steps in getting employee amplification going for your business, these are the 3 baby steps that you can absolutely take. Now, that's kind of 101 stuff, right? Once you get employee amplification going for your business, you can then start looking at some 201 activities. And here's an example of that. You can see this right here. Whenever we do a webcast like this one that you're watching right now, LinkedIn events are always our number 1 channel for driving registrations. In fact, I think we have about 200 people, a little bit more than 200 people registered for today's webcast. Over 100 of those people came from our LinkedIn event, and we didn't pay for any of them. It was just us having connections, our team having connections with targeted prospects, and then inviting those targeted prospects to attend this event. And I'm guessing many of you watching right now, that's exactly why you're watching. And so step 1 is let's get employee amplification going. And then step 2 is let's do things like LinkedIn events and make sure that we're maximizing our organic outreach to try to drive conversions for your business. Okay, the third way that we can earn our way in to drive more traffic to our website is borrowing somebody else's audience. And the best way to do that right now is catching the podcast wave. Man, I'll tell you what, over the last 12 months, podcasts have really skyrocketed. Now, I'm not recommending that you start a podcast. I think that's a 201 activity. But certainly a 101 activity that you can do is become a podcast guest on people's podcasts or companies' podcasts that already have an audience. In fact, 55% of Americans have actually watched a podcast in the last year, and almost 40% of Americans have actually watched or listened to a podcast in the last month. And so it's definitely something that's catching on. You know, when you look at 37%, that's over 100 million Americans that are engaging and listening to this new media format. You know, we're doing this as well for our business. In fact, I have a goal this year of being a guest on 20 different podcasts. This is the easiest way to tap into somebody else's audience because all of these podcast hosts are looking for great content. So go find those podcasts where that podcast host has your audience, and if they have your audience, then you probably have something important to share with them. And so just reach out to them. They're hungry for guests, and I think you'll find that that's going to be a great way to be a guest on a podcast. And guess what? At the end of every show or episode, what does that podcast host say? He says, "Hey, Paul, for our audience that's interested in learning more about you or Vindy Digital, how can they get a hold of you? And then your podcast, the person that's doing the podcast can basically point them to your website. And so it's a great way of driving traffic in an organic way to your website. Okay, we've been talking about earning your way in. What I want to do now is really dig into ways that you can buy your way in. And if you remember, at the top of this discussion, I talked about creating content, but also promoting content. So yes, we can promote our content organically, but we also need to promote our content by spending money. And there's three things we're going to talk about here. One is always on. I call this the hum. You need to always be in market with something. You need to have campaigns focused on lead generation, and you also need to be multi-channel. You don't want to be a one-trick pony and put all your eggs in one basket. So when you think about how do I buy my way in, a couple of things I wanted to share with you. First of all, when we think about our business and how do we grow our business, it's really important that we get in front of this really big circle that we call people that are unfamiliar with you, right? These are our targeted prospects, people that we would love to do business with that don't know that you exist today, right? And then that's our big circle, okay? Our little circle is the people that do know that you exist, okay? They're both important and we need to advertise to both. We just need to do it in a slightly different way. So for people that don't know that you exist, what we want to do is be promoting our content, and we want to do that on sites like LinkedIn, where we're doing an audience purchase, where we basically take a blog post, let's say, and then we say, these are our target customers, types of industry, size of business, roles within those industries. And boy, everybody that fits that criteria, I want them to see this post where I'm promoting my blog. Okay, so that's a key part of reaching people that don't know that you exist. Now, for those that already know that you exist, what we want to do, these are people that have come to your website, people that maybe have opted into things. We want to retarget to them, and the message that we want to promote to them is more mid-funnel and bottom funnel. So top of the funnel is really all about getting, we call it cold traffic, people that don't know that you exist, to know that you exist, but we want to drive them to useful information that's going to help them. And then for people that do know you, let's present them with offers and things that will move them down the funnel. Now, according to LinkedIn, when you take this approach, when you've got advertising in market at different stages of the funnel, so top of the funnel awareness, mid-funnel, bottom of the funnel, your conversion rates are actually 6 times more than if you try either one. And by the way, I've seen companies do try either one on either side, right? So companies, they put all their advertising dollars top of the funnel. They're boosting their blog content, for example. Or companies that put all of their advertising dollars on the bottom of the funnel. They're trying to generate demos or generate leads. And if you try those two extremes, neither one of them work. But when you actually apply a full funnel approach, like I just described, you're going to get much better traffic to your website, and ultimately everything else is going to work better, and your conversions are going to be much, much higher. So according to HubSpot, they did a survey where they went out to some of the top B2B companies that were out there to look at how they're approaching their inbound marketing. And what they found is that the top B2B companies out there are in 3 channels, and they're touching their prospects 15 times across those 3 channels. So think about that. That's LinkedIn, that could be Google, it could be Twitter, but they're in 3 separate channels, and within each of those channels, they're hitting their prospects like 5 times. And so if you think about what the biggest B2Bs are doing and think about what you're doing, this is a great opportunity for improvement. So I'm going to give you just a quick example of how this works. And I talked about this a little bit earlier on, that, man, I'm a big fan of writing content, writing a blog every week, taking that blog, promoting it on a site like LinkedIn where you can really dial in your audience. And then when that person wants to see that article, they click on the link and actually end up on your website. And I've had a lot of people tell me that LinkedIn is expensive. They don't want to advertise on LinkedIn. And the reality is that 3 or 4 years ago, absolutely true. LinkedIn was expensive. Cost per clicks were like $7, $8 a click. Pretty crazy. But today, because of some of the new advertising products that they have and some new strategies that we've deployed for our clients, we can drive really highly targeted traffic out of LinkedIn and other sites for $3 or less per click. And that's fantastic. When you think about what a cost per click is on like Google pay-per-click today, that's infinitely more expensive. And so this is a great way to get targeted top of the funnel traffic to your website. Now, another thing, when you're thinking about advertising to get in front of your buyer, especially when we're doing our mid-funnel and bottom of the funnel campaigns, really important that you have multiple sets of creative. So for this webinar that you're watching right now, we actually ran 4 different sets of creative inside of all of the channels that we went advertising for. So, you've heard of A/B testing, and absolutely that's important. But what we found when it comes to promoting mid and bottom funnel opportunities to our prospects, having lots and lots of creative really makes a difference, because some people are going to be attracted to faces. Some people are going to be attracted to graphics. And so being able to have multiple pieces of content really gives you the best opportunity to attract the widest net of your prospects, if you will. I wish I could share with you more case studies about our clients, but I don't want to share their data too much. But I do want to give you some examples just from our own business, because we do practice what we preach at Vindy Digital. So let me show you a couple of things here. One, we absolutely are multi-channel, and you can see that because each of these bars represents a different channel that we're involved with. And you can see over there on the far right, that's our direct traffic. And so we get a lot of traffic coming from direct, but quite frankly, that happens indirectly because of all these other channels that we're involved with. But you can see over here on the far left, search is our #1 source of traffic. In fact, organic search by far is our #1 source of search traffic, and our blog is where all that's coming from. So search engine optimization and blogging, boy, those are buddies that work really, really well together, and we get a ton of traffic through our blog. But notice the next pillar over there is social. Now that's organic and paid lumped together, but you can see when we're in multiple channels, it really does work well for our business. In fact, the next slide here really just shows kind of where we're spending our dollars and what kind of results that we're getting. So you can see, this is, by the way, January through April. It doesn't have May data in it. So we've spent about $16,000 marketing our business so far this year. We've spent the most in social. You'll see that a little over almost $10,000 there. And we've generated a total of 1,400, almost 1,500 leads. You'll see that at the bottom. And over here at the far right, you'll see that we're at about $28 overall cost per sales qualified lead. A couple of things that I wanted to point out is you'll see that we're generating leads across the board, but if you'll look at those two kind of shaded orange lines, we get a lot of leads through organic efforts. But quite frankly, if we turned off all of our paid, those organic efforts wouldn't work for us. And that's why we've got to be multi-channel, always driving traffic to our website. Okay, so here's a homework assignment. I want you to be thinking about going and looking at your most popular blogs. So you can go to Google Analytics, and if you're creating blogs, you can very quickly see what blogs got the most traffic. So maybe take 3 or 4 of those blogs and actually start promoting those blog articles to your target audience on LinkedIn. You'll be blown away at the quality of traffic that comes to your website. So that's a great homework assignment. If you've never done that before, maybe that's something we can talk about during our 45-minute one-on-one session. And so definitely plan on doing that. And one of the other things that we can do during that one-on-one session is, we've got some tools that can help you identify your target audience on LinkedIn or any of the platforms that are important to you. But I can actually help you understand how big your audience is. Based on the industry you're going after or the roles that you're going after, I can show you, well, there's this many people out there. And then I can also show you what it would cost in terms of media spend to get your content in front of those folks. So that's something that we can do during the 45-minute one-on-one. But regardless, definitely start looking at how can I promote my blog content to my target audience. Okay, so that was step 1, and it was all about getting targeted traffic to your website. In step 2, what we're going to do is really fix your message, right? Because the big challenge that B2B companies have is, man, we like to talk about speeds and feeds. We like to talk about how great we are. We just like to use a lot of words, don't we? And at the end of the day, we're confusing our prospects. We need to be talking about the problems that we can solve and how we're going to help our customer and what that process needs to look like to get them from where they are today to where they're trying to go. In fact, I say this a lot, customers don't buy the best solutions. They buy the solutions they understand from people that they like, okay? And so I was actually talking to a company earlier this week, and they said, you know what? The #1 player in our space actually has the worst product, but they do the very best job of marketing. They're everywhere. And so think about that. If you've got the best product in your industry or the best service in your industry, let's get your messaging right so that you can be the number one in your space. And the way that we do that is we don't confuse our customers. And notice the second part of that is that they buy from people that they like. That's why employee amplification that we talked about in traffic is so important. So our goal when we think about how do we message on our website or anywhere that we touch our customer is really the goal should be always how do we help our customer make fast and easy decisions. I mean, think about it. Put yourself in the buyer's shoes for a moment. Isn't that what you're trying to do? Make a fast and easy decision. And so as marketers, that really needs to be our job. In fact, when we think about the words that we write, it should always be through this lens. How can we make it fast and easy for our customers to do business with us? And so one of the things that we can do is get rid of all of the crazy copy that we've got out there. Let's get to the point and remove words out of our website, out of our marketing copy, and you'll do yourself a favor by doing your customer a big favor as well. So how are we going to fix our messaging problem? Number one, we're going to talk about problems. Number two, we're going to really show our customer what success looks like if we solve that problem for them. And then number three, we're going to give them a very clear plan forward. Now, one of the things that I always try to explain to our clients is, you're ultimately not selling your product or service. What you're actually selling is a better tomorrow for the person that's actually buying, right? They're living with a problem. It's creating headaches. It's causing their business not to succeed, whatever the case may be. And your solution is actually going to help them have a better tomorrow or solve that problem. And so really, when you think about it, we're taking people away from the problems that they're experiencing today and towards a better future. And your solution needs to be that bridge, right? Your solution becomes the gateway that gets them out of the terrible life they're in today and into the beautiful life of tomorrow. And so when you think about, how are we going to message our business, just think about what are those problems that my customer is living with today. In our case, it's like they're not generating leads. They're frustrated. They don't know what to do. They feel like they're wasting time. They feel like they're wasting money. But by working with Vendy Digital, we can help them have more predictable leads, have more confidence that when they spend money online, they're going to get good results. They're going to have better job security. They're going to generate revenue for their business. And so I would encourage you to think about going through that process with your marketing team and come up with really good words that take people from where they are today to where they need to go tomorrow. If you stop talking about problems, then people are going to stop listening to you. And so many B2B companies run around saying, hey, we've got aspirin, we've got aspirin, we've got aspirin. And it's so much better to go around and say, hey, do you have a headache? Do you have a headache? If you have a headache, we can make that headache go away, and we can make that headache go away with this aspirin. And quite frankly, it's really that simple. But what we're doing is we're running around talking about our aspirin. So here's a great little matrix I'm going to walk you through super fast, and you'll want to download the slides either now or later. But this is going to be really helpful because I would encourage you to get your marketing team together and brainstorm through this process where we take a look at a before state and we take a look at their after state as it relates to these four categories. So the first thing you need to brainstorm on is what do they have before? They have a headache. What do they have after? They don't have a headache, right? What do they feel like before? Man, they're uncomfortable, they're uneasy, they're unhappy, it hurts, right? What do they feel like afterwards? What's an average day like before they solve their problem with your company? What does an average day look like after they solve their problem with your company? And this last one is a hard one, but it's really, really important in its status. So what is their status like now, living with this problem? And then what is their status like afterwards, after they've solved their problem? At Vendy Digital, one of the ways we talk about that today is, we work with B2B companies and we know that we've got frustrated B2B marketers that are out there that may be worried about keeping their job or showing that they're valuable to the organization. But when they work with us, we help them become revenue generating marketers, that they own lead generation for their company, and that status makes them irreplaceable. And so you just think about that with your team. And if you go through this matrix, you're going to be in a really good place to write some great marketing copy on your website and in social and all those online points of presence. Once you've done that homework assignment, Here's a real simple formula for writing really good marketing copy. Start with, are you struggling with? That's the problem, right? The next section or sentence can be, oh, sorry, got a little click happy there. Here's what we have. So are you struggling with a headache? Here's what we have. We have aspirin. Here's what it will do for you. It'll make your headache go away. And here's what you need to do next. Go to CVS and pick up a bottle of our aspirin, whatever the case may be, right? So once you've gone through, you got to go through that exercise that we just did first, but then use this formula and you can really start writing some great copy for your business. Now, let me show you how to apply this to your website. So here's our website. I'm going to use it as a case study here. You'll notice that at the very top of our website, as clear as we can possibly say it, what do? The digital partner for B2B marketers. Then right below that in the subhead, we're saying, what's in it for me? Helping B2B companies fill their pipeline with more leads. The next thing we do is we talk about their problem. Are you frustrated with your digital marketing results? And we key on some areas that we know are problems for our customers. And then finally, we give them a plan forward. Here's what you need to do next for this problem to go away. All right, so here's some homework I want you to think about. Could you, after you go through this exercise with your team, come up with a way to describe your business in just 10 words? I really challenge you to do that because remember, our customers, we want to make it fast and easy for them to do business with us. And if you can communicate what it is that you do in 10 words, then you're actually making it super easy for them to understand what it is that you do. Here's 10 words for us. We help B2B companies grow their pipeline with digital marketing. That's exactly 10 words. And so that's your homework assignment. See if you can figure out a way to describe your business in 10 words. Okay, so we've talked about how do we get more traffic to our website? How do we drive more traffic? We've also talked about how do we message to our clients in a way that talks about their problems and how we can solve their problems. The last step in the process in generating more leads for your business is really going to be about fixing your offer and making it easy for prospects to say yes to you. And here's the biggest problem with offers that I see out there is that your customers or your prospects just simply don't believe that your offer is going to help them. So if you're driving a bunch of traffic to your website or you're running some campaigns online and you're getting no leads, here's the simple solution to that. They just don't believe that your offer is going to help them. And so if we want to be successful in generating leads on our website or generating leads online, we've got to present offers to our prospects that they believe is going to help them accomplish and fulfill what it is that they're trying to accomplish. So in order to do that, we've got 3 things we need to do here. Number 1, we've got to make sure we've got a rock solid, awesome primary call to action. Then we also need to introduce a secondary offer. That's that gated mid-funnel lead magnet that I talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation. And then finally, we need to give them a follow-up system so that we can move them through the process with email marketing. I'm going to talk about each one of those. So your primary call to action, right, must connect with their plan forward, right? So here's a big problem, and I'm guessing many of you that are watching this webcast right now have this problem. You have a passive call to action on your website. And here's what a passive call to action is. If your primary call to action is learn more, if your primary call to action is contact us, that is a passive call to action that is not communicating to your buyer, hey, this is my plan forward. I have this problem. I'm on this website. If I do this thing, it's going to help me solve my problem, okay? So if you want to generate more leads on your website, your primary call to action has got to help them or give them a plan forward to solve their problem. So you can see on our website here that we've got a 3-step plan, and we recommend that every business thinks about a 3-step plan that you can communicate on your website that's going to help move your prospect forward. We always start with what's in it for me. Ready to get more revenue from digital marketing? It's easy to get started. And the first step in our process really is the first step of our sales cycle. So you can see, schedule a discovery meeting. And so you need to be thinking about your business. How do I go from a passive call to action to an active call to action and have that call to action be the first step of my sales process? But most importantly, the first step in really creating that momentum for that buyer to solve their problem. On the web page where you're going to actually convert them, it's really important that you make it super easy for them to understand what's going to happen next. So very clean and clear, as few words as possible, but be sure you tell them what to expect. Hey, you're going to fill out this form, and here's what's going to happen when you fill out this form. You do not want to confuse them at all. It needs to be a gateway, a process towards helping them solve their problem. Now, I've kind of hit on this a couple of times, but if we want to generate more leads for our business, we've got to introduce a mid-funnel lead magnet as a great way to generate more leads. Because if all you have on your website is a contact us or learn more button, you're just not going to generate many leads. But if you can introduce something in the middle of their decision-making process where they'll give you information about themselves in exchange for something valuable, then that's going to help you generate a lot of leads. I mean, think about this webcast. This webcast is a mid-funnel lead magnet for my business, right? I'm not asking you to schedule a discovery meeting with me. I'm asking you to come to a webinar where I can talk to you about our point of view of how to solve problems, and you want that, so you basically registered to come to this webcast today. It's exactly the same thing, but it doesn't have to be a webinar, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. So in our lead funnel framework workbook or guide, on page 55, we have a whole section to help you think through how to create and what are the best mid-funnel lead magnets for your business. So be sure to check that out when you download the resource a little bit later on. Here's another reason why, and man, this is huge. Okay, so if you've gotten distracted in the last few minutes, please pay attention to this because this is really big. Privacy issues are becoming a huge, huge deal. We all know about Apple and what Apple did with their latest iOS update and the impact that that's having on advertising on sites like Facebook, and it's all tied to privacy. And so some of our advertising opportunities are going to go away in the near future. And so the best way to protect against that is to make sure that you've got your own list of folks that you can market to. And the best way to create your own list of folks to market to is by getting them to opt in to something. And that's really, really going to be critical in the future. Now, when you generate mid-funnel lead magnets, really good things happen. Number one, you're going to help your customer by clarifying their thinking, right? They've got this ambiguous problem. They need help to think through it. Number two, you're going to help educate on your point of view. Remember, we talked about why point of view is important earlier in the presentation because that's what's going to separate you from your competition or help them understand how you're different than your competition. Number three, it's going to help them solve a problem. It's all about creating momentum. And then number four, it creates reciprocity. So if somebody opts in and receives value from the thing that they opted in for, that's going to create trust with them. That's going to make them like you more. And remember, 91% of companies actually do business with the vendor that was the first one to deliver value. So lead magnets are a great way to do that. You need to be launching at least one per quarter. So that's 4 times a year. And the reason for that is that gives you something new. Going back to traffic, we want to spend some money on advertising. We want to have that hum, which is promoting our content. But then once a quarter, we want to build some advertising campaigns around our new introduced mid-funnel lead magnet. And one thing that's really cool, if you take this approach where you're going to do 4 of them a year, you can archive all the ones that you've done previously in a resource center. That's what we do on our website. And what's cool about that is when you launch a new lead magnet, you're going to generate a bunch of leads because you're going to spend advertising dollars behind it. You're going to run campaigns. But then you can archive it on this resource center. And guess what? You're going to continue to generate leads forever with that resource as long as it's relevant. So examples could be checklists, guides, video series. Again, just download the guide that I mentioned earlier, and it'll walk you through ways that you can do that. So I'm going to give you a real quick example. We've done 2 guides so far this year because, again, we practice what we preach. Once a quarter, we want to come out with a new guide. And you can see that with these 2 guides that we've promoted so far this year, that nearly 700 of our 1,500 leads that we've generated so far this year have opted in to one of our 2 mid-funnel lead magnets. And one thing I want to highlight here over on the right is this 21 digital trends. I don't know if this will work for your business, but man, this is our biggest lead generator every single year. So whatever the year is, we do, this year is 2021, so we did 21 digital trends for 2021. Next year, we're going to do 22 digital trends for 2022. We always launch it around December of the previous year, and we run it through the first quarter of that particular year. And man, we generate a ton of leads. So think about, can you come up with, 21 something trends for your industry? I think you'll find that it'll work really well for you. Another thing, once you've got your resources or these mid-funnel lead magnets, you want to promote them throughout your site. So you definitely want to have them on your resource center. But one of the things that we do on our website and also our client site is we make sure that we're promoting them throughout the site. This is an example on the Vindy Digital site where we've got it at the bottom of several of our pages. But we also use a right-hand sidebar, a sidebar on the right side on our blogs. Remember, blogs generate a ton of traffic to our website, and people are doing searches in Google looking for information. They see our blog article, they land on our website. They're there for the content on the blog for sure, but why not promote whatever that lead magnet is that we're trying to promote right now? So that's another great place to generate leads of people that are coming to your site from Google but are there to read your blog. Now, I know a lot of people that are watching this are probably going to go, no way, man. No way do I want to put a pop-up on my website. I know pop-ups are a pain in the butt. Nobody likes them. They're kind of keeping the user from doing what they want to do. But here's the truth. They work. They actually work. We don't put a pop-up on every page of our site, but we do put a pop-up on our blog when we launch a new lead magnet. And so this is something that you want to be thinking about. And so anyways, that's a key thing to just think about. Maybe you put a pop-up on your website, but maybe you don't put it on every page of your website. Okay, so we've been talking about creating great offers, but now that you've got somebody that's opted into something, we need to make sure, again, to nurture relationships, that we're communicating with them post-visit. And so we've got this next step drip email sequence I want to walk you through real quick. One is, you need to deliver the asset. Okay, that happens immediately. Step two is, within the first week or few days of them opting in, send them an email that talks about problems and your point of view on how to solve those problems. The next email would be a testimonial or a case study, and this goes back to establishing authority, right? You want to give them a case study on, hey, here's how one of our customers solved this similar problem that you're trying to solve. Around 1 week in or 2 weeks in, you want to overcome an objection. So go talk to your sales reps, find out what are the top 5 objections you're always hearing, and instead of waiting for the sales reps to have to deal with that, actually deal with it in an email that you send out to your prospects. And then finally, on day 5, which is around 2 or 3 weeks in, depending on your business, is ultimately an act now type of email where you're really trying to encourage them to schedule whatever that first step of your sales process is. And so it's really key that we have great offers on our website, but once people opt in, that we're communicating with them in a post-visit way. And so those are just some things to think about there. Okay, so I know we're getting towards the end of this presentation. I promised you it was going to be a fire hose, so I'm not feeling too guilty about the fact that I have been fire hosing you. I knew that it would be. But here's a quick homework assignment. Go look at your website. Do you have active or passive calls to action on your website? Do you have a contact us button and a learn more button, or do you actually have a call to action on your website that's going to propel the customer forward towards solving their problem? Another thing that you can do is try to come up with a handful of ideas around this mid-funnel lead magnet for your business. We've got this great resource that you can access from page 23 of the guide that I've been talking about throughout the presentation today. On page 23, you can download this resource, and it'll basically give you 100 different ideas. It's basically like Mad Libs. It's 100 different prompts where you fill in the blanks, and I promise you'll come up with 4 or 5 or 6 different ideas for lead magnets for your business. Okay, so I've already said this was a fire hose. I appreciate you hanging with me, but I do want to ask you a question here as we get ready to land the plane. Do you believe that if you take these 3 steps that I've talked you through today, using traffic and earning your way in and buying your way in and creating content that talks about problems, if driving more traffic to your website using those tactics, and then messaging appropriately on your website by talking about the problems that you can solve and really clearing up and making it super clear on how you can help your customer, and then ultimately having an active call to action and a mid-funnel lead magnet, do you think that those things will actually help you accomplish what the purpose of this webinar was all about, which is helping you generate more leads? And I hope the answer is yes, because I promise you, if you haven't done those things and you implement some of these things, you'll absolutely start generating more leads for your business. Now, I mentioned that poll at the very beginning of the presentation where we polled 300 B2B marketing leaders. We also asked them the question, hey, how's your digital marketing plan? Do you have one? Is it good? Well, 90% of the marketing leaders that we talked to said they either don't have a plan or their plan needs a lot of help. And so one of the things I would encourage you to do is just take a look at our B2B lead funnel framework, because it's going to help you think through what are the gaps and what you need to do to really build a rock solid plan for your business. Because this framework really is going to help you make some sense out of what you're doing with digital marketing. As I said, it'll help you fill in the gaps that you're trying to fill. I'm going to leave you with a couple of things here as we get ready to wrap. Number one, I love this quote from Peter Drucker that says the best way to create a future or to predict a future is to basically create the future. And so if you want more leads for your business, I think I've given you a recipe today that's going to help you generate more leads for your business. And so the one thing I would encourage you to do as we're wrapping up is go to vindydigital.com/go and be sure to download the slides, be sure to download our B2B lead funnel framework guide, but also schedule that 45-minute session with me. And I would do it right away because, like I said, the next 2 weeks are kind of opened up. They're going to fill up really fast. But my hope is that we'll take all these concepts that I shared with you today, give you a few days to kind of let them rattle around in your brain, and then we can get together for 45 minutes and I can really understand your specific situation and help you apply some of these concepts to what you're trying to do. Maybe you need help with traffic. Well, I can give you some ideas around that. Or maybe you need help with improving the messaging on your website or the call to action on your website or coming up with some good mid-funnel lead magnets, or how would you promote those mid-funnel lead magnets. I'm happy to talk to you about any of those things. It's 100% complimentary, and as I said earlier, I'm not going to try to sell you anything during that call. So it's not a sales call. It's 100% about you, because as I mentioned at the very top of our webcast today, really what I'm here to do is to give you some real practical ideas that are going to help you generate more leads right now for your business with digital marketing. And so be sure to get that 45-minute planning session scheduled. And thank you so much for your time. One other thing I'm just going to touch on right before we wrap. I know we didn't have time for questions today. I knew that this would be a hard format to do that, but any questions that you have based on the information I shared today, bring those to the 45-minute session, and I'll be sure to get those answered for you. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you hanging out for the fire hose. You guys have a great rest of your day.